Tonight's program features a very unique speaker in that he's a member of a three-generation military family. I'm sure there are others, but we don't see many of them. And he has lots of information here on the table about his family and his grandson, unfortunately, killed in action in Afghanistan in 2013. Tonight's book sales, please buy a book. The proceeds will be presented to the Cameron J. Stambaugh Memorial Scholarship Fund at his school in Spring Grove. I can't think of a better tribute to the young man. Many headlines. Let me take you back to 78 years ago and tell you something that happened. And it was personal to me and some of us who went on a trip to Europe to see all airborne operations in World War II in Europe. You think of airborne only as parachutes until this. The very first airborne operation was in a place called, in Belgium, called Aban-Emel. Aban-Emel was a great big fortification over the Albert Canal on the Dutch-Belgian border. And it was heavily armed, and the guns were trained on the three main bridges across the canal, and were intended to keep, if the Germans ever came, they'd blow the bridges so the Germans couldn't get to the low country. The Germans were well aware of this fortification, and it was always assumed that it was heavily mined, and they didn't want to attack it because it was so well fortified. Until one day, the airmail plane, which is run by the German Bundespost, which is part of the German government and part of the military, basically, was flying his airmail route in his biplane, and he looked up the side and he saw a bunch of people playing soccer up on the field on top of this fortification center. I don't think it's mine. So none other than Adolf Hitler himself devised a plan by which they would take gliders and land in this place. And they practiced for months and months and months in a mock-up place they made in Czechoslovakia. And then, one fine day, on May 10th, this is because it's May, by the way, 78 paratroopers armed with special high explosives landed on Aban-Emel, and the explosives were new shaped charges. They also called them hollow charges, designed to go straight down. On top of them, the fortification had these mounds, parapets that had guns in them, and they also had machine guns up there. So these guys jumped out of the gliders, ran over, put their shaped charges on top of parachutes, boom, blew them up, and with machine guns they covered with fire, unfortunately. And but anyway, they took this place over almost, just in record time, a couple hours they owned it. But they couldn't get inside. This was designed to hold 1,200 soldiers, only of which 670 were there. The rest are out and about on leave or something like that. But it was so well fortified they couldn't get inside, so they just surrounded it and waited till the infantry came along the following day and took charge of it and they took it over. Interesting enough, they had cut off some shooting on the bridges. They shot the only bridge that could have allowed the Belgian army to come over and give them support. So good news, bad news. Good shot, bad deal. So it just shows that good espionage and good planning can often make a plan work out. Totally, the Germans lost only 6 of the assaulting engineers and 21 wounded, and they kept the defenders pinned down until the arrival of the main attacking army. After the success of the capture of the fort, Hitler personally decorated all the personnel, participants of the assault. So quite an interesting thing, and that was basically the first airborne operation during the war. Of course, we know the other ones in Normandy and whatever. Coincidentally, on the same date, May 10th, who do you suppose became the British Prime Minister? Winston Churchill. On May 15th, 1940, Holland surrendered to the Nazis. On the 26th, began the evacuation of the Allied troops from Dunkirk. And on the 28th, Belgium finally surrendered to the Nazis. So those are the highlights of May 1940. 78 years ago. Amazing, isn't it? Okay. Our resident headhunter. Where are you, headhunter? Charlie. We'll come up and tell you about some upcoming activities and speakers and introduce tonight's program for you.
Opposed?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Got a nice crowd. Thank you for attending. We appreciate that. I'll forget introducing the speaker immediately and hit some of the speakers coming up. And let's see, this is right. In June, we have a fellow by the name of Robert Bocklehurst. I'm not sure, Palmyra, ready? Myerstown. He's a P-40 fighter pilot in the Aleutian Islands. He's quite a story to tell. The fellow that just answered that is Chris Huffman. He's our historian. And I didn't bring my notes, so I got to get over close to him to ask him what we're doing. But we have Bob in June, July.
Bob in June, July. We have the Herman Pfister.
Oh yeah, Herman Pfister is a Hitler Youth, and he went through that, and they came here, and after all that, he joined our army, and now he's in the World War II days and ready, and he sells a lot of German artifacts. Very, very interesting fellow. We're doing July.
Each July and August is Bill, the Japanese American.
Oh yeah. Wait a minute.
But
No, we got.
I'm sorry. August is penalty on.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
See, I need him. I wouldn't take him. I bring my notes.
But Bill will be coming.
Yeah. Clem Leon from Gettysburg will be here. He was B-24. He was radio operator, engineer, and they got hit with a bunch of M109s. And the story is absolutely amazing. In August, we have, I'm going to ask somebody else here. What's Bill's last name? Oh, Aida. He was a freshman at the University of Washington. The war broke out. Of course, he was born there, Japanese nationality, but American. And then he got into about a couple of years of internment. And he actually ended up in the 442nd, which was the most decorated unit, all Japanese in Europe. I mean, he didn't get to go to Europe. He got to go to military intelligence school. And he worked his service there. And then I think he got his degree in physics and ended up in Lancaster, RCA, developing something called color television. I remember color television. We got our first one on the day that they landed on the moon, I think. Now comes the highlight of the evening. You ready? All right. We've got Quentin Stambaugh here, Stummy, excuse me, that's what they call him in the service. And his experience is B-25, North American bombers, Hiroshima, you flew out of there? And he has quite a story to share with us. So, and his family's here with him, so I'm glad that they were able to make it. Would you please give us a big hand for
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. To say that I'm overwhelmed would be the understatement of the year. This is truly remarkable for me, and I had nothing. I had no notes or anything, so all I could do is maybe walk you through where I was, when I was, and so on. And it all started with the draft. I did not enlist. I was drafted, and I guess you might say even a draft dodger. I had a deferment for 6 months. I was working at the Glen Martin plant in Maryland. So after that, of course, they kind of had their eye on me to go. In reminiscing over some of what I'm planning to talk about tonight, I couldn't help but think of the Dutchman who I I think maybe come from Africa, called himself Professor Schnitzel. How many knew him? Know his records. They're terrific. But anyway, when he first got his notice to go to be inducted, he says, "You can't take me." He says, "I've got connections." So they grabbed me by the connections and they took me. It was great when he went for his physical. He said, when they lined to put us all in a line, he says, and then he made us take off all our clothes, he said. We didn't have no place to put our hands. And what else did he say?
People had shoes.
I forgot. Then he said, I looked down the line, he said, Abe Lincoln said, all men are created equal. I said, all men are not created equal. He said, some of them had feet this big. So, having said all that, I'm going back to where I was when I was drafted. I was living in the little town where I still live, Springfield, Pigeon Hills. Charlie, or not Charlie.
I'm over here.
Smitty. He lived in the Pigeon Hills. Anyway, at 1941, I graduated from high school. Okay.
Give an order to Judge Blackburn. I forgot something. You want me to share that?
Go ahead.
We were stationed in Hiroshima for the Japanese surrender.
Mike's not.
No, me and the microphone.
Oh, sorry.
Not this.
I'll get down. Don't think they weren't choppers.
I can roll some microphones up there, you don't use them.
I gave it to Kirk.
There's another one.
He was stationed in Hiroshima,
Aishima.
and naturally flew out of. And I think you were offered to take the flight up to bring the Japanese envoys back.
Yes, I had flown all missions. I flew 39 missions and never was assigned to a crew. Wherever we needed a radio man, I was nailed. So consequently, I got to do a lot of flying in a short span of time. And come the day that the Japs were surrendering, pilot with our squadron commander, Major McClure, sent a courier down to my tent with a little note. Says, going out to meet the Japs tomorrow, would like to have you fly a radio with me. I, at that time, was a senior radio man on the base, in our squadron at least. So I looked at the corporal with the note, I turned the note, I said, thanks, Major, but no thanks. I had no interest. I finished my missions 10 days before that. I just wanted to go home.
Thank you for that. So we have about a 8-10 minute film on that surrender route coming in, escorted by our fighters, and getting on. And you know what I noticed about that film? All those troops, they were so young. So young. It's amazing. But they did that, and we're going to run the film now, and that'll take in your next step. Thank you.
That might be it there. For B-24, she's taking the envoys to Manila. Okay. Okay, getting back to where we started, I guess, with the draft. My first assignment was to go to Fort Meade, Maryland, where we were equipped with uniforms for the first time, or Army clothing. So any cities that we had to get rid of. traveled light, no money. He said it only take less than $5. And a comb and a toothbrush. That was about it for baggage. After we had our first GI haircut, you didn't need the comb anymore either. I got to Fort Meade and as being processed, what they always asked everybody what they did and where they might be slotted and so forth. I said, well, I could type pretty good. I was pretty good in typing in high school. So next day, believe it or not, I'm doing what he was doing. They had me processing recruits coming in. And that went on for about a week. And I finally said to one of the permanent people there, I said, how do you get out of here? I said, where would you like to go? I said, well, the Air Corps probably would be a choice if I could make a choice. My brother and I used to ride down to the Thomasville Airport, and this one Sunday morning, the owner of the airport and a friend were talking about the war, and if they had to go, I remember Mr. Hoster, the owner, said, if I have to go, I'd just as soon fly it out as walk it out. So it kind of stuck with me, and next day or next 2 days, I was on my way to Miami Beach for basic training. Put us up in one of the finest hotels on the beach, Patrician Hotel, 41st and Collins, if you're familiar with Miami. I'm not. But we stayed there for about 6, 8, 10 weeks, I'm not sure, but I went through basic almost half again because you had to wait to get, they were going to put me into a radio school, and they had to wait till they had enough for a class, so I went through basic 1.5 times. I finally left for radio, and that's up in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Good train ride. About early July by that time. This would have been April when I went in, not beginning of July. And I remember the ride up there was the pheasants. There's a great pheasant hunting here. And the pheasants were on the shucks on the wheat. They shuck the wheat like they do sometimes around here. But with the combines, it's rare to see that anymore out west, I think. But anyway, these pheasants were so numerous, they seemed they were really a nuisance. Anyway, we got there, and they had us radio school about 10 hours a day. We had to build a radio transmitter and a receiver from scratch. They had the parts there, and of course we were supposed to understand how radio works. If you ask me today, I still don't know. I would not have passed that part of it. Anyway, finally got out of there, and the day we left, after being there for, I guess, 3 months or more, it was now November, the day before we left, we had the biggest blizzard they had there in years, and the wind chill factor was 40 below zero. When we left, the barracks was closed, the space between the barracks were all blown shut, you couldn't see out the windows. Anyway, we're on our way south. We weren't sure exactly where till we got to Texas, and then they said, well, we'll be going to Arizona. Got to Arizona. After spending about 3 days in Texas, you'd wake up and you'd think you were there, and it still was, we were halfway through Texas again. And we finally got to Yuma, and this was going to be gunnery training, and it was 120 in the shade under the airplane wing. That's about what the temperature was. And we used to make our water cool by opening the petcock and that little high-octane gas run on the canvas, and that cooled our drinks. That's what we had to drink. Did a lot of shooting, a lot of shotguns, like skeet shooting, had like a half-mile track, and you were mounted into a ring of a turret, and you get 100 rounds of ammo, and they take you around and shoot these skeets or claybirds at you from all directions. And you did that for a solid week. I used to put my hat in here, my shoulder hurts. I used to try to pad that a little bit after shooting 100 rounds, and I think we were at it for 5 or 6 days. Also, we took high altitude flying at that time, 3 or 4 times in a B C-17, went up to 35,000, and we had wool sheep line boots, caps, gloves. You didn't want to touch any metal at 35,000. So we did that several times just so we get the use of the oxygen and so on. That'll come into the picture later as to the gear we had. Finally got out of there, I guess about 2 months of gunnery training. We went to Columbia, South Carolina for overseas, they called it overseas training, and we formed into crews. So six of us were on a mission every day almost, even nighttime flying routinely, just everywhere. As radio man, I was making contact with all the cities like Charlotte and all over the South. Come the day we were about ready to get out of there, we had to go to Savannah, Georgia, to pick up a brand new airplane. Flew it back to Columbia, and we were just about ready to. In fact, we started to put some things into the plane to take off, and I got word through the Red Cross that my mother had passed away. So I had to get a furlough. I had a 5 or 6 day leave. Went home and for the funeral. Came back, and almost the same day or the very next morning we took off for the West Coast. Didn't know exactly where we were going, but the pilot was from Texas, the navigator from Kansas, the top gunner, engineer gunner, he was from Lower California. Anyway, we just took our good old time going across the country. The pilot, he wanted to show us everything that he could in Texas. And of course, we actually flew down into the Grand Canyon, some places like on the back I could see walls all both sides. And they were getting the joke on it. Over the wheat fields of Kansas, just so the crops would clear. Everything was just down on the ground. Finally got to Sacramento, California, and they were putting some extra gear on the plane. I think a radio compass of 1 and a half a Bombay tank for the extra gas to get us to where we were going. We still weren't told we were going. Just about, I'm not sure the time anymore here, but we finally took off. We actually flew under the Golden Gate Bridge when we left. That was a routine thing. We just give a little wave and we were off. I think we went first to Christmas Island and then to Hawaii from there. There's where I wound up in the hospital. I wound up in the strep throat. And they were apparently too well equipped to treat it. I think they painted your throat with iodine. And if you had athlete's foot, they used the same iodine. The same swab, I think, too. But anyway, finally got out of there. But the crew couldn't wait for me anymore. And they took my baggage out of the plane and left it in, I'm not sure where. So I had to raid around to try to hitchhike again to get off the island to go to my orders were in my B-4 bag. Report to NADSAT New Guinea to the 309th Bomb Wing. Now that's a wing encompasses many groups of airplanes. So we didn't have no specifics. When I hitchhiked and got to NADSAT, I started asking around where my crew was. Nobody seemed to know anything. He said, put me up in a transit camp over on an island of Biak, pretty big island. So I was there laying around for a while, and I said, your outfit might be over on Aui, a little smaller island. And I got a ride over on a B-25. A pilot was doing some touch and goes there. And he said, what do you do, soldier? I said, I'm a radio operator. Get in the back. He said, so he took off and landed at another strip on this little island. I'm at this end of the strip, and the top of the tower is at the other end of the strip. I had all that baggage, all my winter boots and everything yet. I had close to 100 pounds of baggage, B-4 bag, and so I drove that down to the tower, just a cement or a metal case of circular stairway, and finally got up there and didn't know anything about the 309th Bomb Wing, mostly Navy people. So I climbed down again, grabbed my plane, and here comes that same pilot again. Get in, took me back to Vietnam. So I'm laying around there for a while. They said, they think your outfit might be in the Philippines. So I find out that there's a plane going to the Philippines. Yes, they want. I found a flight up to Leyte, and put in a bivouac area at the end of the strip. There's a metal strip they had put down for fighter planes, and we were just feet off of that runway. And I know there was at least 6 planes that didn't land proper, burned up. Some of them, the P-38s and P-51s. It was just a bad, hazardous landing. Anyway, I needed to get closer to, they said maybe San Marcelino. I had to fly all the way up to North New Zealand. They had the winter capital and the summer capital. I think that was their summer capital. And that was miles from where I needed to go. So I got another plane. I got a chance on a PBY, a seaplane, twin-engine seaplane, and it flew me down to Subic Bay. We landed there again. I still have my 100-pound baggage, and get out of the plane and hitchhike on a truck. They said it's only a couple of miles, maybe 7, 8 miles. I got to hop in about a 10-wheeler, hauling supplies on the ships. A lot of cargo coming off that bay. Took us up over this little mountain and walked, got out and said, this is it. The airstrip was there. We walked over WWII because there was a guy in the signal corps. He was about as bad off as I was. And he rode in with a truck with me. I remember shooting a big lizard on the way up. Anyway, we got to this place where they thought this was where the 309th Bomb Wing was. 2 tents. There was a big tent and a smaller tent, I guess, where they slept. And we walked in there, and who do you think I saw? The first man I walked up to, that same pilot that flew me down in Vietnam. Same colonel, he was a full bird colonel. And what do you do, soldier? I said, you don't remember me, but I said, well, yeah, radio. He said, good. He said, and the guy that was with me, he was in the signal corps. He was fast on that rapid key stuff. Anyway, he said, check your bags over at that MP station. He said, get something to eat and come back. He says, we got a lot of work to do. They were just really setting up. And I don't know what happened to the signal guy, but I'm around there and I'm doing just odds and ends stuff. Finally got to be his lackey, in a sense that he wanted me there. He'd make some local calls, a few miles or on the island. And I kept asking him, I said, sir, I'd like to get to my crew, and I know I asked him a half a dozen times. But he had me so convinced that I should stay with him. He had his own, said I have my own plane, I have my own 2025. He said I get back to Hawaii about once a month for construction and stuff. I put up with it, and I asked him again. The last time I asked him, within the hour, I said, I kept saying, I'm trained for combat. Can you imagine how stupid I was? I said, I'm trained. I'd like to find my crew. So he said, if you want combat, you'll get it. He puts me in this outfit that I wound up in. I didn't know what the name, no name or numbers or anything. Within the hour, he had a jeep waiting for me in my orders. I had 7 copies of them. I'm assigned to that outfit. Here was the air Apaches and the 345th. And I had been typing up strike reports for him just the days before, and I know the one, I pitied those poor guys. I heard him say, there was a colonel and a couple of lieutenant colonels. They got to knock this bridge off up in Formosa. There's a railroad bridge that's got to go. He says, and with a lot of acting players said, we only have something. I don't care if we open every damn plane. He says, I want that bridge knocked out. Well, I'm in that outfit now. Anyway, I get to, Corporal took us through, signed me a cot, there was only 2 cots empty. That was, I was gonna take this on the sunny side. No, you can't have that. He said, see over here. That's the man, he mentioned his name. He was shot down, the crew was shot down, he survived. He was on a 2-man life raft for 30 days. The very next day that I arrived, he came back. He was picked up by a submarine. Terribly looking, full of scabs and so forth. He was stricken the last 2 weeks or so, the last 10 days, I think he said. He had no fresh water, he just used salt water and put some chocolate candy in it. Anyway, I'm there, I'm assigned. What am I getting? Just anything. Anybody needed a radio man or whatever, I need somebody to bake potatoes, I guess. But I spent around 2 months or 2 weeks at least before I got around to flying my first mission. And it's February the 25th, and I flew my first combat mission. And consequently, I flew 39 of those missions, some not good. Even a practice mission, there was a hull of a Jap ship in the harbor, which was the target, and they were, the colonel, or not the colonel, the General Kenny was out with the squadron commanders, and they were trying to get these people, or the pilots, to do more accurate bombing. Anyway, I came in with the pilot, was just checking out his first pilot, and I knew the bomb bay doors weren't that far above the ship when one of these 50-pound bombs went off on impact. And that all came up through the airplane, not the front of the airplane, the back where I was. And some holes as big as your head. And pilot radioed back, he says, everything okay back there? And I had a junction box here, I had to hold the toggle switch to toggle. And the box wasn't there. I just went like this over the bomb bay, and that was all right. We landed, and people, the ground personnel came over to look at this airplane. It had over 100 holes in it. And I didn't know until about 15 years ago that the pilot, the pace of that shrapnel went through the back of his seat, took out his right kidney, and they couldn't save it. He died right there in the tarmac. And these people were ground crew. I walked away and didn't even know what had happened. The plane never flew again. The main spar was broken in the right wing. And ironically, that happened to be the same plane I flew out of Savannah, Georgia. The last time it flew. The plane wound up in our group, in our squadron, where I was in, but not the crew. And it wasn't until I kept writing to the engineer and the gunner, and the last letter I got back was marked deceased. And it was just, I never really knew what happened until just recently. Mr. Bina, who was in there, comes to our reunions. He did some research for me, and he found out how they were killed. 4 of them of the original crew were killed on a raid on a Jap tanker, and they piloted through the plane, the B-25, wounded, crippled pretty badly, into the bridge of the tanker and took it down with them. What's next? I had a mission, one mission anyway. We were doing support mission for the 77th Division, going up through Luzon. And the pilot I'm with that day, he cut the engine. There was a lot of fire ahead. I couldn't see it. I'm looking back. There was a burning building ahead, and he wanted to get closer to it, and he cut the power. And we just kind of lumbered down, and the next thing you know, we're into that building. We chopped it up with the props. With bamboo, about this big around it. We landed, and I was heavy. It sounded like we hit a big corner shop or something. And when we got back, I saw all these black marks. Somebody took a big black marker or something, put it all over the plane where these black burning sticks hit the plane. What else? I'll go back to my last mission. We would go into shipping missions, 2 planes abreast, started about 4,000 feet, and they dropped down to full throttle and sprayed the decks. We had 1850 caliber machine guns on our plane, each plane. Sprayed the decks, and then they dropped below the level of the ship, skipped the bomb into the side of the ship, and up and away. It was very effective. We sank a lot of ships, and we lost a lot of planes too. The last mission I was on, I'm flying again with a pilot who had never flown a shipping mission. And we rid 2 abreast, but we're lagging way behind. This other plane goes in here, and I thought, well, we can't go in. I said to myself, we can't go in there now. I'm looking over the ship. Saw him way out ahead. So, sure enough, we went in. They dropped the first bomb, missed it. The second bomb was very close, and we were right over that water spout. And it just picked our plane up, threw me up against the canopy. I had a helmet with a metal helmet on, came down across my face, cut me a pretty good gash here in the side. First taste of blood I had. Anyway, I thought we were in the drink. I reaching around for the handle, the red handle to get out. And I realized, even though I'm soaking wet, the water came up through, the spout of water came right through the span hole that the span ammo goes out, about that big. And it just threw me up like that. Soaking wet. And I realized after I couldn't find the handle that it was still flying. And it was unbelievable, just shaking. And we had to drop down to get some airspeed up again. And we finally started to climb a little bit. We could jump on 2 fighters. And I shot most of my ammo at them. We had to drop down again to the top of the waves to get away from them. And we did. Halfway home, we spotted a man in a raft. It was a Navy pilot, I believe, who was later. I gave the coordinates on the radio, and we waited till the seaplane came in to pick him up. I got back to I knew I was getting close to being finished, but I wasn't sure. I never told you exactly. It was all points. You didn't know where you stood exactly. But I knew I was getting close to finishing. And I got back and I went to the first aid room. They put a couple of bow ties on me. I went through debriefing, and I said you could get a double shot of whiskey after each mission if you wanted it. Well, I never took it. I hated this stuff. Beer I could drink. But I said to the clerk that, I said, I'd like to have my whiskey. And he poured a shot out or whatever. And, no, I said, I'd like to have it all. I said, what do you mean all? I said, I have 39 missions. He said, pour the one, after the other bottle, after I had 2 half bottles of whiskey, he said, took them back to my tent, and 3 tent mates were there at the time, and I passed out. We were cutting this stuff, it was 4 roses or something like that. We were cutting it with grapefruit juice. The guy had under his cot, can of grapefruit juice, and anyway, I passed out, and for a half an hour they said, I'm not sure, they tried to wake me. They had me by the tufts of hair, pounded me in the pillow. He said, Stummy, you got 103 points, you go home. And well, I woke up then. Now that was part of it. Now I'm finished. We went through disbanding. I had pictures of almost every mission I had. We had a camera in the back of the plane, took pictures, about 10 pictures on every second picture. And by seniority, you had your pick of the pictures on those missions, and I had a beautiful stack of pictures. What happened? Made a mistake. I went with it. Finally got off the island, Hiroshima. But before we did that, a few of us that were left, they sent people home by cruise. I didn't have a crew. So I couldn't get home. And we'd go down, a few guys like me would go down to the shore, we'd hunt sea or seashells, and still laying around in I finally got out of there on a night mission. They said there's a B-24 leaving at 5 o'clock, and this is like 3 in the morning. They woke me. Said if you can get to Okinawa by 5 o'clock, you can get on that B-24. Well, I somehow got a boat. Somebody had a boat that took me over. It's only about a mile. And got down. Where did I go? From there down to Manila again in a transit camp. Couldn't get to the state. Finally, after a couple of weeks again, I guess maybe 10 days, he said there's a ship leaving for San Francisco. It's a PT tender. And this boat apparently supplied the PT boats with gas and food and whatever. A small ship. And it had a 3-engine thing or whatever. And the one south before we left Manila, we were out a day and a half, another week now. So we're out on single engine. Now there's a typhoon coming up. Seriously, a severe typhoon. And we had to go circumvent that. We had to go down to the tail end of that and head toward Frisco. How many days on the boat? 30 days. 30 days on the boat. And when I got to the States, I still couldn't go anywhere unless I got Red Cross or so to get me some transportation. And I'm not sure how many days I spent there waiting for that. But I finally got on a train to Baltimore. Got home. Well, the day I got, I'm not sure the day I got, the day I got home was November, the end of October. I'm a hunter, and I had to get a hunting license to hunt on Monday. This was Saturday. So I just got the Seekers Hardware store in Spring Grove in time to get the hunting license for the next morning, or for the next Monday morning. One of the guys in our tent who chickened out or whatever, he quit flying, took over the mail route in our area. And he drove down he was from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. He drove down on his motorcycle to see my dad, or to see me. And my dad said, "What are you looking for?" He said, "He's looking for me." He said, "My pop told him, well, he's in the war." "Yeah," he said, "I know, but he finished his missions. He should be here." And then they had the Red Cross looking for him, and finally I got home. Didn't get discharged for another month and a half. I had to go to North Carolina to get a discharge. Questions? I was alone, pretty much. If I had it, I know there's a lot of World War II guys here, and we pretty much did the same thing, but as to camaraderie or getting close to a group of persons, that didn't happen. Except the one man, and I have his picture there somewhere. Robert Goulet was his name, from Buffalo, New York, and he was in the crew that I flew the mission, but not in his plane, and they were captured. They crashed or ditched off the island of Formosa, were captured by the Japs, and where the entire crew was beheaded. So, and to show you how your mind works, I had a Filipino houseboy came to see me. He said, Clark Field, we were San Marcos and Clark Field, and he couldn't go to Ayashima, but he said, "Someday I see you." And sure enough, he did. He got through college in Manila and got to Groton, Connecticut, I think, and on his way back, he stopped to see me, spent a whole week with me. And first when I saw him, I said, "Do you ever hear from Goulet?" And he said, "Mr. Stambaugh," he said, "You know, Mr. Goulet died." And he was the one that was in my tent. So I just kind of put it away from him. Didn't want it to be real, I guess. I'm done.
B, did you always encounter enemy resistance from fighters or ground fire or whatever?
No, we would. Generally, we had some people to meet us. As the fighter escorts, yes, we had some C-47s primarily, and P-50s, we had 30s, but it wasn't every mission. And aside from the not having that, the weather, we were fighting the weather more than anything, almost as bad as the enemy. We didn't have the gadgets you have now. We know what the weather's going to be. A lot of times we'd go out for 4 or 5 hours, couldn't see up or down, and had to go back.
Anybody else? All right.
Mr. Stambaugh, when I was reading a little bit about your service, I believe you were flying near Hiroshima during the bomb attack there. Is that correct? Or
We were coming back off of a mission. We were firebombing incendiaries all the way up the WWII coast. The target was wherever the fire stopped, start new ones. That was our target until we ran out. Incendiaries would turn around and back. On the way back from one of those raids on August the 6th, I guess it was, the pilot radioed back to me. He said, "Look off to your left." He said, "There's a big brown cloud in the sky." He said, we're not supposed to fly through. They dropped something down there today. We're not supposed to fly through. Who they was, I didn't know. That's all. But we're not supposed to fly through. So we had to just circle it. I mean, it was no big deal. But yeah, there the cloud was. It was mushrooms far higher than we were. We were about 6 hours.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Stambaugh, you surprised me the last time we got together. I learned that you're bilingual. Could you talk to the audience and let's see if they figure out which language you also speak?
Which language I also speak. I do a little Tagalog, Filipino. Yeah, now kami I do it over.
I thought there was another one more local.
You're talking about Pennsylvania Dutch? Yeah, well, I had a good teacher there. I had a second home. My uncle had a store, a coffee store, and people came in there who couldn't speak English. Very Dutch at the time, and so that's how I learned to speak it. In fact, I can write it to some extent. Yes.
Mr. Stambaugh,
Yes.
I know that the B-25 had many different versions, and there were some versions that had a hard nose, and they stuffed every gun they could imagine in that nose of the B-25. 50 caliber machine guns, howitzers. Were those modifications, did they originate in the States, or were those just crewmen on the ground figuring out how can we modify these aircraft?
I believe most of them, as guns were added, they were done in Sydney. They were equipped in Sydney, Australia, I think, or somewhere down there. Every plane that I flew in combat had 16 planes until we eliminated the waist guns. And then the radio man took over the tail, so there were only 5 of us, but we still had 14 guns.
Thank you very much.
Or 16, I'm sorry. 1850s normal.
Is this the Ioshima that Ernie Isle was killed?
I'm sorry, I can't.
The island of Ioshima?
Uh-huh.
Was that the island that Ernie Isle was
I have
killed?
his picture there. I took several pictures of his monument, and I had a neighbor just a mile or two from where I was. He was killed on Ioshima also. And his cross was up. I have it with his cross and Ernie Powell's monument on the same picture. There was 2 rows of them.
And what missions did you fly out of Ioshima
How many?
with the B-25?
How many?
What missions? What was your mission?
Mostly shipping missions.
Shipment
They would spot convoys of ships.
in the Philippines?
In the Philippines, from the Philippines, Clarkfield and San Marcelino, and also Ioshima. Yeah.
But
We did a lot of ground support in the Philippines for the 77th Division.
You couldn't reach Japan.
I don't think we wanted to, but
One
So you said when you saw the mushroom cloud, and I was just wondering, what did you think when you saw it? Because you couldn't have had any knowledge of the atom bomb or what.
I had no idea what it was or anything else. I just told the president here, as we were coming back off this incendiary mission, the pilot radio was back to me on, look off to your left, there's a big brown cloud in the sky. They dropped something down there today and we're not supposed to fly through it. That's all I knew, and that's all apparently the pilot knew at that time. I didn't know who they were, or if they assumed it was us, but we didn't know.
Were you alone there? Your plane aircraft alone, or was there more of you there?
We pretty much single planes coming back.
Yeah.
You target the opportunity, and you didn't rendezvous that much
Yeah.
after the target.
So there was no planned exercise for your group to be in that area at all?
Absolutely not.
No, okay.
No, we weren't exposed to that at all.
Anybody else? Yes, Chris. Speak loud, I don't know.
Oh, okay, yes, sir. Oh, okay. Oh, you're really coming? Okay.
Yes, Quentin, the short film we showed here, could you see yourself in the crowd of all the guys that are watching the Betty Bombers come in? Could you see yourself in the crowd?
No,
The film you
that's,
saw?
that's not the picture, that's not the movie that I wanted to see.
Oh. Okay. But you liked it anyway, though, right? You still liked it, though, right? Brought back some memories.
The one I had was much clearer, and it showed a B-20 sound. There was no sound on this. The one I was talking about had a B-25 sound, rev engines revving up, and if you've never been next to a B-25, they have a distinct sound. You knew it was a 20. I don't have to look up. I still live pretty close to an airport in Thomasville. When that plane comes around after the air show ratings, I don't have to look up. I know what it is.
And the second part of the question was, you had told me before and Charlie that you shut down a couple Japanese aircraft and had one probable. I was wondering if you could tell the audience about that too. They might enjoy hearing that as well, but shooting on those planes.
I only know it's on my record that I had 2 kills and a probable, but I feel badly about that because I know I hit more than that. They didn't call me super gunner for nothing.
Anybody else? Oh, one more.
You flew in close proximity to the bomb being dropped. When you got back, was there any detection of radiation on the plane or anybody?
We weren't in the cloud at all. We were just, it was there, but we weren't in it. I was not exposed. I don't think at all. Sometimes I feel like
All right, well, I have 2 very, very, very important announcements now. The first of which is the most important. As you exit this evening, please say hello to our helmet committee, who will be there to graciously accept your free will offering as a result of the wonderful time you've had tonight. Second, Quentin, nobody leaves here without a little token of appreciation.
Mr. President.
Yes, no, just don't get your hopes up too much. But all of our speakers, not only our speakers, are awarded the famous, hardest to get facsimile of Good Time World War II Round Table mug.
Wow.
And hopefully we're going to good use.